So we want to start this off with a poll question. And if you look on the screen, there's a QR code that you can use. There's also, if you go to slido.com and enter the number, you can answer about 5 questions. So we're going to give people a few minutes to go ahead and do that. So people let me know when it's been 5 minutes and we can close it. I'm going to get on and see if I can see people answering the questions. And then I'll know maybe when to stop. So go ahead, if you don't mind, go on and answer the questions that are listed. So anyone that just got on, if you could answer the questions, go into the QR code or going to the stuff that's listed in the chat on the slide so that you can answer a few questions. And thank you for joining us. I don't want it to be dead space, so I'm going to talk. I can't tell. It looks like people are voting. There's been 5 votes so far. I want to give people an opportunity to answer. So go ahead and answer. There are people that are responding. It's up to 8 now. So I want to try to give people a chance to respond before I just close it out. So if you're just joining us, welcome. This is HIV and talking about why we still have this issue 40 years later. And we're going to delve into this, but right now we have like a poll that we like people to respond to if they don't mind. We're actually up to 8 people, 9 people. Partners, should I let people continue or should I close it out?
Well, we're at just about 2 minutes. Let's give it another minute probably, and then we can move on through.
Okay, so I will do that. We're up to 9 people that have responded. So we're going to give you about a couple of more minutes to be able to answer it before we close the poll.
We have about 1 more minute, Naima.
Okay. Let me know. It doesn't look like it's advanced though. So I'm wondering, should I just go to next now and close it? Because we haven't advanced past 9.
20 seconds.
Okay.
We can move on.
Okay. So I'm now closing the poll. So I closed the poll at 11 people. Let me see what people said and responded to. So the first question, which we can go back to this, but it looks like 11 people answered it. The analysis of it was that 30% of the people, oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the right slide. How about if we come back to it and I'll let people know how people answered a little later when it's not my turn to speak. So we're going to continue on. So in this discussion, you're going to learn about the discussion about common myths and biases that still exist for HIV. So there's a reason that the virus, even though we have the advancement in certain areas and people are living longer, people are still acquiring the virus. There's still stigma that's out there that's preventing people to get tested, even though they know that they might be at risk. So we hope that we're also going to have a discussion about a holistic approach versus silos. And we're going to learn about helpful tools that people can take back to their community to help them maybe start to rethink about how they deal with HIV. So my name is Naima O'Neill. My professional side is that I'm a social worker, master level. I have my license to provide social work. I went to Cleveland State for both my master's and bachelor's. I worked at the AIDS Task Force Security Cleveland as a housing case manager and then later a medical social worker. I currently work for Circle Health Services. Some people know it as the Free Clinic or Circle Health. And I am doing medical social work. I've been doing it for the past 5 years. I sit on the Ryan White Planning Council, very active, also a chair of the Community Liaison Committee. I'm a member of We Think for a Change and the Women We Think for a Change. And I advocate in a lot of circles, both locally, statewide, and nationally. This personal side of me is I'm a mom, I'm an aunt, I'm a sister, everything that a lot of people are on this call. I'm a grandmother of 3 grandchildren. The first time I've never had a son, but I have a grandson. I've been a member of my Imani Church for over 10 years. And I like to share my life and my story. And I'm also a woman who's been living with HIV since in December, it'll be 30 years, so next month. So let's look at this. Look, at the screen, what you're seeing is a virus, and this virus is called HIV. On the screen, it might look a little menacing, but we're talking about something that you can't even see without a microscope. It's been wreaking havoc on people for 40 years, and it's still wreaking havoc. For some people, it seems to have the upper hand. For some communities, it makes people isolated, but we're talking about a virus that you can't even see without a microscope, but it has a commanding hold on people, not only living with HIV, but the community at large. This is another picture of what HIV looks like. The little round things are CD4 cells, and this is what the virus gets itself into in order to reproduce and make more copies of itself inside a human body. So again, in the United States, we made enormous advances with prevention and with care. We can even get an HIV test and take it at home now. And the epidemic has been around for 40 years. But with those advances, we still have the leading cause of death for young people, HIV. Even though we have advances, new rates have declined. But people are still acquiring the virus. They're still not taking care of themselves, and they're still not getting tested. Even though we have PrEP, we have pre-exposure prophylactics, and I know I didn't say that word right, sorry, for people who might have gotten a needle stick or think they've gotten exposed. So with all of this, and I want people to keep in mind as we talk, why do you think that is? So this is something that I'm sure people have seen. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but these are still things that people think is a way to transmit the virus, and it isn't. But people still think that. Some people still think mosquitoes. Some people still think toilet seats. Some people still think kissing, sharing utensils, and touching. And I'm a mother, and I'm living with HIV. And when you have little kids, it's hard for you to not tell them not to eat from your plate. And my kids did, and neither one of my children are living with HIV. And if I wasn't allowed to touch them and give them that nurturing, that would have probably been a problem. So you see, part of the issue is that people still have old myths that they're hanging on to, and they're not allowing to change. So this again is talking about myths. The only two that's on here that's extra is the one that talks about air and the one that talks about water. So for a lot of people, if someone is positive and they cough, they think that that's the way to transmit the virus. And again, drinking after someone or sharing a cup with someone who's positive, there's still a lot of people who feel that that's a myth. So with this common myth and truth, there's a couple of things on here that's not necessarily true anymore, even though it's been a myth for a long time as common 10 myths. And anybody can you tell me who you think, or in your mind, who you think it might, what myth might, or what truth might no longer be the actual truth? So one of the ones is through so two people who are both HIV positive and have unprotected sex, they actually can without a problem, even if they don't use the condom. It's not necessarily recommended because there's other STIs that person can get. But if we're talking just about HIV and both patients or clients are on the medicine and have been for some years, there's nothing for them to share. And so we're going to go on to the next one. I'll let you ponder about the other one. All right. So here's another. And this is actually something that's kind of turned into a bias, and it affects others. So these things that we share in public that are not correct are biases and myths that are causing people to isolate themselves if they're positive. People who don't know their status or their family members might convince them that they have to eat off of public plates, that they can't use their plates. They don't want to play basketball with them, just like Magic Johnson. And I know it had a lot more to do with just sweat, but with the average person is sweat. And so those are not ways the virus could be transmitted, but we're allowing them to still be relevant today. And so what is a bias? So bias gives weight, unfavorable weight, against an idea. And sometimes people have closed minds about it. They're prejudicial and they're unfair. And, you know, people develop biases for many reasons. Individuals, groups, beliefs. People might have a bias against science. And some people don't want their kids to be vaccinated because they think that it causes children to be autistic. So all of those are biases, and a lot of times um, uh, they're not given, or they shouldn't be given the weight that they have because there's no scientific basis for it. At least not, because anybody can do a science project, and depending on how you do it, it will the results will be the way that you want it. But if it's true and unbiased, then those are the ones that we need to pay attention to, because they're not trying to sway you with their own individual biases. An example of a high-priced one or high-profile one was O.J. Simpson. He was acquitted of murder, and years later, people still act like he was convicted of murder anyway, because the biases that they had against him and about him have stuck around since the 20th century. All right, these are just examples of other biases. People were charged with murder because some people still feel that a person who has HIV is a bioterrorism, or is, you know, a person's body is considered a lethal weapon. All things that create the stigma and let the stigma flourish unchecked. So if you look at this as an example of a stigma, so a lot of people living with HIV are socially isolated. They don't necessarily have a good network. Part of it can be them because they don't have a self-acceptance of their virus, but they also need a support system from the community that's going to help them. And sometimes they don't have that. And this is an example of a program. If you do hashtag Stop HIV Together, you can go on and see if there's something that you can do to help lessen the stigma that people feel. This is another campaign about stopping stigma, because believe it or not, stigma is an epidemic, and it's the main reason why HIV is allowed to flourish unchecked. What if it were you? How would you feel if you were HIV positive and people were treating you the way that we just talked about? How would you feel? Would you be able to handle it, or not? Because, you know, some people that can't handle it, they resort to drugs and alcohol, which further sets them back, because they, believe it or not, it's challenging, just like other illnesses like diabetes or high blood pressure. But HIV is the only one that I think has a public stigma. Some people might correct you, or they say, you know, you don't need that sugar because I'm living with diabetes. But it's not that they're not going to touch me. They're not going to have a conversation with me. They're not going to want me to wash their clothes in their washing machine if I had to. So HIV has its own stigma, all of it on. But what if it were you? What would you do? What would you feel? And if you can answer that question, then maybe you can help other people living with. All right, so there is social etiquette when it comes to people disclosing. And so if someone says to you that I'm HIV positive and I need help, what does it matter how long they've had it, or how did they get it? And that's, I know it's curiosity and people want to ask those questions, but if you really want to help people, the questions on the right is, are you you're not alone. Have you started treatment yet? I'm here for you. All of those are nurturing questions. And the other questions are the ones that you should really avoid if you truly want to have a conversation and get someone who is HIV positive to trust you. And so this next slide is talking about imagine a world without stigma. Imagine that. And I'm almost one of those persons that like to do that. So, you know, we would have global testing. We would have it safe to talk about HIV on TV. And right now we talk about medicine, but I'm talking about HIV, talking about people living with it, discussing what we can do, and not having people stigmatize those people. Learning about it, talking about it, because that's the only way that we're going to get rid of stigma. So all these things on here. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is HIV criminalization. If there were no laws for HIV, I think that people would get tested. So this is a perfect slide of imagining what the world would be like without stigma. So I want to check in at this point. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat that people want to us to answer, but if not, I'm gonna go ahead and go on since we did the thing. But just remember, you could put questions in the chat, or at the end, we're gonna have time for questions as well. So there is an intersection when you talk about epidemics, when you talk about HIV, and a lot of it has to do with race, sexism, gender identity, poverty, and we all know that. We all know this, that the communities that this impact are very vulnerable to acquiring HIV. And so these are not things that people don't know or not aware of, but I do believe it's something that we don't deal with. Because if I am HIV positive and I don't have the means to support myself, how can I take my medication? A lot of people are being mass incarcerated for having HIV, and we'll talk about that later. And then, you know, some people don't have the education that they need or the level of education to understand what they even have. And some people say, oh, you know what you have, but do you really understand what it means to be living with HIV? So next we're going to talk about HIV criminalization, my favorite topic, because there are a lot of people who are sitting in jail right now at different parts of the state because they mainly didn't disclose their status. So that means that they didn't tell someone that they were HIV positive. So I have mixed feelings about this, but I know as from a community standpoint, if we don't change the laws or modernize them, then it's affecting people who don't know their status. They're not going to get tested because they're going to say, if I don't know my status, then I can't be subject to the law, and they're correct. All right, so let's ponder this. You know, everybody that's in this room today was the product of unprotected sex. If you think back to when you were a virgin, who was the experienced person in the room? And if there was someone who wasn't a virgin sleeping with a virgin, then that virgin slept with everybody who that person slept with. Think about that. And so we don't have real conversations about sex. We really don't. And not the conversations that we need. A lot of people want to talk about abstinence. A lot of people don't want to really talk about it, because if you share it, especially if you share it with your kids, some people think that that's going to give them permission to have sex. And I don't agree with that, but we don't, that's not our discussion today. Lastly, you care about HIV laws, you just don't know it yet. So this is a video, oh Lord, I hope I could get it to play, that I hope will play for you. The people on here, I might have to go out of slide mode for 1 second. Oh Lord, do I see it? Oh, there we go. Uh-oh, what happened? You guys, I'm sorry, I'm not computer savvy. Let me go out of the full screen. There it is. So I'm gonna have to play it like this. Let me go back to the beginning. It's only about 8 minutes, and I hope everyone can hear it. Uh-oh. Okay.
Well, something is against the law.
Can everyone hear it? I can't hear it, Naima.
Oh, Lord.
Lifetime sex offender or very, very bad thing. So that's just
Oh, I guess I can't get it to go any higher. I don't know why it's not playing. Because I can hear it. If no one can hear it, I'm going to stop it.
Today, Fort Welsh was charged with another count of first-degree assault. The special statute covers passing on AIDS or poison.
Are people unable to hear it?
No, I can't hear it.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen with the original slides. And what I can do is just talk about it a little bit. It was a video that that was done by the Zero Project. If you go onto YouTube, it talks about HIV is not a crime. And so it talks about a few, 2 men and a woman who were subject to the law, which means that they were either arrested, they were, 2 of them were made to be labeled as sex offenders for a minute. They since overturned that verdict, but they talked about their journey of being incarcerated and that whole problem of HIV disclosure, non-disclosure. So the woman got it from her husband. She met someone, and you know, people are lonely and we want human touch. So she didn't tell him that she was positive because she didn't want to, she just wanted to be loved. But she made him wear a condom. So she protected him. There was no way that he could get the virus from her. But she was discharged from her Army service. The Army wanted to prosecute her, even though the person who she had the sexual encounter with didn't. So there are a lot of different ways. And then the other guy on here, his partner decided, and his partner knew that he was positive, but I guess because they broke up, he decided that he wanted to tell the police that he didn't know that his partner was positive. So after all the dust settled and they realized the person had lied, this person's life had been turned upside down. Uh-oh. You guys, I'm having all kind of trouble with these slides. It's not letting me advance.
You're not sharing your slides right now.
Is that it? Okay, I'm sorry. Let me, oh Lord. I'm sorry, you guys. I am not computer savvy. I am trying to get, oh, here we go. I'm back up here. Uh-oh. Wait, okay, I need to get, I'm sorry, let me do this. Let me do this and let me share my slides again. That's what happened. Sorry about that, people. It's still not letting me advance though. Oh Lord. Jesus. Oh, there we go. So right now you could sit and wait. So there are states in the United States, and you can look at this map, and if anyone wants a copy of it, we'll be more than happy to give it to you. These are all the states that either have laws specifically to HIV. Some of them just have laws about communicable diseases or illnesses, and so that's how they group HIV in. So if I'm a woman living with HIV and I get caught with a lot of condoms, I can be charged with solicitation or attempt to solicit. But if they find out that and that's a misdemeanor, but if they find out that I'm HIV positive, then it goes to a felony. And I can't speak to all, and I don't want to give misinformation, but if you get this map, or if you are from some of these states, you can contact any HIV law and policy, and they can explain the nuances of the laws in the state that you belong to. In Ohio, people can be labeled as sex offenders, which means that if I'm a mom and I'm positive and I'm given that label, I can't live near a school district. I also can't see my children, my nieces, my nephews. So HIV criminalization does two things. It criminalizes people who are just being human. And it also criminalizes people, or it can't criminalize, or it keeps the community from knowing who's positive in the community. Because if people know about these laws, they won't get tested. Because if I don't get tested, you don't have a record of whether I'm positive or negative. So I can still have unprotected sex. I can still do what I need to do. But I'm not subject to the law because I've never had a test that, because once you're tested and you're known to be positive, you're on a registry in your state. And even though if the police stops you, you don't have to share it. Once it does come out, they usually change the charges to make them something that was a misdemeanor or felony. All right, so this is the second QR code, and I honestly don't know if it's gonna work. But if you go back on it, you should see some different questions. I hope that you do take a few minutes and answer the survey. I'm gonna learn about technology, because I tell you, it's the way of the future. And if you don't know it, you're gonna have a problem. So let me know if people see questions about U equals U. That's what the next topic that we're sharing. Is anyone having any issues with getting on?
I was going to ask that question, Naima, because I don't
have you gotten on it?
It's saying, for me, it's saying there's no questions. And I'm looking in the chat to see if anyone else is having that same issue. If you can put in the question answer if you're having the same issue.
Okay, so I think.
Right, so someone else says there are no poll questions, so they're not there. It must not have taken when you put them in.
No, what happened, I think, is that when I cut off the one, I cut off them all. So I'm trying to make it go live, but I'm wondering if I could make it go live again, is it gonna be the same questions? So,
okay, they are here now.
Okay, but
the questions are here now.
Is it U equal U questions?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great. All right, so go ahead and take that poll. I'll give you a few minutes, just a few minutes, because we want to keep it moving. I don't want to monopolize all the time. So can someone tell me like 2 minutes?
I will. I'm timing now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So
actually,
again,
if you want, I can, so we don't have dead silence, I can read some comments if you would like.
Sure, that would be great.
So I have one comment that says, let's go to the first one. It says, I think that the rates of HIV are higher despite PrEP because a prescription is required to get it. Your thoughts or your ideas on this?
Prescription to get what, if they could clarify?
PrEP.
Well, a prescription is required, but there are so many ways to get it that if you don't have insurance, you can be given PrEP. If you go to certain clinics, you can be given PrEP. They're supposed to be doing it in an emergency room. You can even get it from the manufacturer. You can get PrEP that way as well. So I think that I think one of the barriers is not necessarily about the prescription. The barrier is, will your doctor give you the prescription? Because there are some physicians who don't believe in PrEP. So I'm gonna, let me know when it's a few minutes. I'm gonna mute myself.
I will. We're just about at 2 minutes. I'm gonna read another comment. It says, I believe until our society have dialogues about sexuality, embrace sexuality, that's one of the ways we can start breaking in our society and culture barriers of stigma. Our country still lacks the conversation about sexuality education. That's all the comments. And so we're at 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes now for the poll if you want to end it. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, you guys. You know how you multitask. So we're going to stop the poll. I'm not going to close it out.
Never mind.
No, you asked me a question.
No, someone is saying that they wanted to have the chat open because they're having issues with tech. But if you put your questions in the question answer, instead of trying to put them in the chat, I can read it there.
Oh, okay, yeah. It'd probably be better if you put it in the question and answers. So is there anything before I go on that someone wanted that they had put in a question and answer section? Tina, did anyone put anything else in a question and answer session? Okay, all right, let's go on, you guys.
No, I'm monitoring it, it's not.
Okay, thank you. So, oh my God, now, okay, there we go. U equals U is not really a new concept, although a lot of people consider it a new concept. So what it means is that if a person who's positive has taken their medication for 6 months or more, then they literally cannot transmit, share. Some people use the incorrect word of infect, but they can't give their virus to anyone, period. There is no, 98%. No, it's 100%. If that person is on their medication and has been on years, they can't transmit to anyone. And so this is a new concept. Well, not a new concept. I'm sorry. I used the word that was incorrect. It's not a new concept, but it is a concept that people have kind of been quiet about and hushed about, because there are a lot of physicians that believe that if they tell someone that they're undetectable and they can't transmit, that they somehow are not going to be responsible with taking their medicine anymore. So this is worldwide. There are a lot of people in other countries who are giving us information. They're trying to put it to the forefront because literally, it's the hope that's going to end HIV stigma. Because if you tell someone you're positive, if you take your medicine, that's the best way for you to protect your partner and protect your community. And we need to get behind this concept. There are a lot of people who are HIV positive, like the Wellness Project that I took this slide from. They are trying to make sure that people understand that you cannot share your virus with anyone. And it may encourage people to take care of themselves better. And it may encourage people to get tested. But again, I say, and I know we've already talked about it, HIV criminalization is putting a wedge in that. It's keeping people from wanting to test. And those are the people who are literally sharing their virus because they have a lot of it, because they're not on medicine or in care because they're unaware of their status. So maybe we need to look at some different concepts. So next we're going to talk about toolboxes, and everybody has their toolbox. I'm not going to play the YouTube video. You can, if you get the slides, you could go on and play it yourself. I'm not having too luck with videos, but we need to take the old stuff out of our toolbox, or we need to add more innovative stuff. So this one concept that I'd like to share with you, and this is actually a book, and it was part of the video, is that we need to talk about post-traumatic growth. I understand we have trauma, but there are a lot of people who get their adversity through trauma, and they turn, that concept that says take lemons and make lemonade, where this is actually a concept, and I think that this should be in people's toolboxes. I think that people should become familiar with it because we want people to grow through adversity. And a lot of times the way we talk to them as professionals either traumatizes them more or we help them. And so we need to get new information in our toolbox so that we'll be able to help people. And so the next couple of slides and stuff that we're going to talk about are things that is in your toolbox. And the things that you learn, or the things that you may learn on this video, webinar, is take it to your community. Start with yourself, teaching yourself, learning about the things in your community that talks about HIV and AIDS. There's planning councils in people's communities. There's support groups. There's doctors' offices. There are places, there's AIDS service organizations that you can learn about this. You can then share it in your community. Everybody has a church that they go to. Everybody has family members and birthday parties and all these things that they go to. And while some of this conversation may not come up, but when it's appropriate, you need to share it. And you need to make sure you're sharing correct information and sit at the table, because it's going to take a community to end HIV. And that's the part about operating in silos. We tend to let someone else handle it. And this is a community illness because it's affecting the community. And so some of the sites that I'm going to share with you is that a lot of counties and states have Ryan White programs. Look in your community to see if they have one. And you don't necessarily have to join, but they have those, a lot of those are public meetings. And so you can attend if you choose to. They have local ASOs, organizations that work with people living with HIV. A lot of these websites provide accurate information, the CDC, the Healthline, all the ones that are listed, thebody.com. So these are, and HRSA, all of these have websites. And if you were thinking about having a program in your community, I would say go for it. But what I would say is get on HRSA to see if there's some grants that you can use, because there's a lot of grants that are out there that people can apply for to do this work. The next one are drug sites. So I heard someone talking about PrEP. Gilead, Vive Connect are places where people can get medicine for PrEP and for people living with. So do the research, ask the questions. If you're unaware of what's going on, find out. And there's lots of drug assistance programs. So if you need something like PrEP, you should be able to get it. Even if your insurance decides that they don't want to pay for it, there's still a way. There are magazines like thebody.com, POS, that give useful information, up-to-date information about HIV and AIDS. And then these are sites that are national sites. And these are sites that are also global. And a lot of these sites, like the Zero Project, is where I got that video from. The Whale Project is one of the slides that I had. And some of these are ran by people living with HIV, the Black AIDS Institute. Look at these sites and become familiar with them, because besides this talk, because it's only, giving you an overview of things, these places can give you the information that you need if you are in need of education. These are also, so the next series of slides are HIV awareness slides. And so it's important that part of the awareness is making sure that you talk about it in your communities and not just have something for World AIDS Day. Everybody tends to do that for World AIDS Day. But as you can see, there's a National Black HIV Awareness Day. That's February 7th. HIV is not a crime. They have a Women and Girls Day. They have one for Native Americans or National Natives. They have one for Vaccine Awareness Day. They have one for long-term survivors. So as you can see, there are a lot of other awareness days. They have a faith awareness day. They have a national HIV testing day. And so the list goes on. And then at the last one is World AIDS Day, which everyone tends to want to flock to, but the awareness can be given throughout the year and not at the end of the year. All right. So you've heard me talk
Naima,
for a while.
I'm sorry, Naima. Before you go on, I just want to read the pertinent chats to your portion.
Sure.
Of the presentation.
Yes.
Someone is requesting, actually, if you could put the links in the chat for the videos that you were referring to.
I will try to do that. Okay.
Okay. And we have HIV is just a symptom. It's just a symptom of a larger problem of symptomatic and structural disparities. Before HIV, Black women and men had stigma around being over-sexualized or less than human. So the narrative around stigma, HIV, and Black folks, that's how they put it, has existed since 1981 and actually in hindsight before. Another comment says, one concept we have to change is call it HIV, U equal U, undetectable or untransmittable no longer HIV positive. Then another comment says, we also need to utilize a status neutral approach that catches us up with comments and questions.
Okay, well, I agree with all the comments that have been put forth. And I know that until we start talking about some of those real issues and get rid of these silos and have a more holistic approach of how we deal with things. But I agree, nothing's going to change. But that means that everybody needs to come to the table. So the people that have made the comments, are you active in this community, or are you active in your community doing the things to bring awareness, not about just HIV and AIDS, PrEP. A lot of women don't know about PrEP, don't understand PrEP, and are not being prompted to educate themselves about it and also to use it. And that's something that they can have in their toolbox to help them stay HIV negative. I hope that answers, because I don't really think I answered the question. I think I just said that I agree with the comments that were put forth. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to, and this is another toolbox, and community-based organizations don't get enough credit. People who are doing the work, and a friend of mine always calls it dirt advocacy, don't get enough credit because they're on the ground. They're not in, well, I'll use the ivory tower because I can. They're on the ground doing the work. And so one of these organizations it's called We Think for a Change, and it's ran by a woman that I admire. Her name is Michelle Jackson Rollins. I'm going to let her talk about herself and the program that she has in the community so that people might get an idea of what they might like to do on their own. And Michelle, when you need to advance your slides, let me know.
Thank you, Naima, for that great presentation and for the introduction. So We Think for a Change is definitely, I'm sorry, I've been sick the last couple of days, so you all have to bear with me. So We Think for a Change is definitely a community toolbox. Next slide. Okay, so our mission is that We Think for a Change is to join and empower individuals and urban communities impacted by HIV by reducing stigma through education, awareness, and healing efforts committed to forward the progress in the HIV movement. Next. And our core values are, the next slide.
I'm sorry, it won't.
Oh, okay. So our core values is we draw strength. This is inclusiveness. We draw strength from centering voices of the aging HIV plus population at the forefront as key leaders and facilitators of our programs. And this creates an opportunity for people to come in and volunteer and receive a small stipend. We choose to advance relationships internally and extremely among individuals, organizations, and communities with the focus on centering voices and leaders of the HIV population. We stand for the mission and the individual's right to self-determination, even at the risk of compromising ordinary acceptance. And then trust. We promote a sense of security and hope through honesty, ethnicity, openness, and healing. Next slide. So our timeline. So We Think for a Change was birthed out of a cry. I went back to school in 2011, and in my internship, I was placed in Garden Valley neighborhood, and this was a community with marginalized and a huge percentage of kinship care. We had some of the highest new diagnoses in this community. My first day as a intern, there was a rally in the Valley, and that's where people from all over came, and we put door hangers or door knockers on the people in the community's door to bring some awareness to the community about some of the statistics. So I did my internship there, and that was, and let me say this, the rest is history, because everything else I did from that point was all about HIV. Coming to this particular conference is very special because I can remember the first time I attended, Dr. Reyna said that stigma kills. And at that point, we said, we don't want people to be killed. No stigma. So I went to South Africa and worked in several Zulu villages there. And then when I became the AIDS lady in the community, especially at school and so on. And so in 2018, after listening to so many people, and it was decided that we form We Think for a Change. So that gives you a little background about how we got started. Next slide. Okay, so our events, right now we're doing anywhere from 10 to 15 events a month. It's slacked down a little bit now because of the season, but like over the summer, we were really busy. We received a grant from the CDC, and we have take-home test kits, and everyone is wanting a take-home test kit. We do events at senior housing. We do events in the high schools, and also at faith-based community events. And this is an opportunity to educate the community because they're very engaged in these events. So then next slide. Okay, so some of the other things that we do is that we have Women We Think for a Change who put on wellness retreats all over the state of Ohio. They also do webinars. We just had one webinar for trans and cisgender conversation. Planning Your Sunset, well, actually Planning Your Sunset was done by our advisory committee, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we also hosted a food giveaway twice a month, whereas in a community that has some of the highest diagnoses. We also partner with other organizations that actually do the real testing, because we don't do testing, we give out test kits, but we partner with other organizations that do the testing. Next slide. Okay, so our programs, we have home delivery. We have what's called Get, Stay, and Thrive in Care. And what that means is that if we could take a small thing off of your plate that help you continue to stay in care and thrive in care, we're able to do that. If it's nothing but getting bus pass or getting you where you need to go. To the doctor's office for an appointment. Also, we have a food delivery, and everyone that we deliver food to are living with HIV, and we give them fresh fruit, vegetables, meat, bread, everything. And matter of fact, we partner with Garden Valley. I don't know if I told you, but Garden Valley at one time was serving 30,000 people a month. So we partner with them and do the food delivery. Also, we have, next slide. Okay, so we also have an advisory committee that is made up of everyone living with, and they share their expertise. They work as a sounding board for the board and for me in a lot of instances. And they meet monthly, and they're just good. And then we also have a community health worker who will be coming on next. And she's just amazing. She helps people stay in care, thrive in care. She's just amazing. And we're just grateful to have her. She makes phone calls to everyone that's in our base and just make sure everything is moving smoothly, especially like with our technology work program. And so I'll let her talk about some of the things that she did. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad that you're here.
Here's Tina.
Hello, everyone. I am Tina Marbury. I am the community health worker for We Think for a Change. Next slide. So I can barely. So who I am as a professional. I am a community health worker. I'm a certified medical office manager. I have been a compliance officer. I'm the founder of Vidar Resources and Management, and also Rooted in the Community, which means rising over obstacles to end division. I am a Ryan White Planning Council member. Sorry. I'm also, I am also on 2 subcommittees, which is the Community Liaison Committee with Naima, and also on the Prevention Committee. I am also with We Think for a Change. As we stated, I am the community health worker there. I am on the advisory board as well. And I am also a member of the Women We Think for a Change. Additionally, I am currently a patient advisory board member for University Hospitals in Cleveland. Next slide, please. Who I am, personally, I have been married for 35 years to the most wonderful man, which allows me to do all the things that I do within the community. I am the mother of 4 children and the grandmother of 4. Next slide, please. So again, I am the community health worker, and I went through the program here with the Ohio Board of Nursing through Cleveland State University. And how the program was structured was through collaboration, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And the Board of Health had Ending the Epidemic funds. They used those funds to contract with Cleveland State University to do the community health worker program. They partnered with the Vision of Change, who helped to support the students to get through the process. And I just want to read, I'm going to do their mission statement as well as We Think for a Change. You heard their mission statement, and it just gels together to show you how the grassroots organizations come together as one, because you hear that same common goal. So their mission statement for a Vision of Change is to work with and network with grassroots organizations, cultivate relationships with residents, provide access to healthcare, and improve social disparities. So what they did was they supported CSU, which is Cleveland State University, we have a required 130 hours of community work that we needed to do. And so they were instrumental in getting those opportunities to us. That helped me in turn when I became the community health worker for We Think for a Change, who's, and Ms. Rollins already told you what their mission statement is, which is to join and empower individuals in urban communities to impact individuals with HIV and AIDS by reducing stigma through education, awareness, and helping efforts committed to forward progress in the HIV and AIDS movement. Next slide. I'll tell you more about what I do in that realm later. So We Think for a Change. If you look at these, we can look at these a couple different ways. You have the first one, which you have the community there, and you have that one person on the outside. So the community that person needs to reach into the community and help them to stay together, to be together, to thrive in this virus that that we're living with. You have the lady in the center that's in the light bulb, and so she may have a lot of wonderful ideas, but she shines bright there, but she's alone. So she needs to be involved or find some way to get involved with the community, with the grassroots organizations to expand on helping to end this epidemic. And again, the same can be said with the last one with the young lady off on her own. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the collaboration and what a community health worker can do, I'm going to focus on the center photograph there. And I'm going to tell you what We Think for a Change does. So we do the food distribution, and Michelle touched on very many things that we do. We also assist with resources for housing and utilities. We assist with medical appointments and medications where we can, getting people to their appointments. I do the wellness check. So I call every month, and just check on people and just ask how you're doing, just having a conversation. If there's something that you need, maybe you just want to talk about something not pertaining to your health status, and that's okay. I just want to make sure that you're doing okay, and make sure that you have someone that you can reach out to if in need. Everyone doesn't have a family member or a friend that they can go to. And so I tell people, if you just want to call me and hold the phone, I'm okay with that. As long as I know that you're okay and this helped you get through the day or get through whatever you may be going through at the time. We reiterate to the medical professionals, social worker, case workers, or any other entity that may be working with the HIV and AIDS community to increase their quality of life. So if you see they're sitting there in that center section and they're talking, that patient may be more open to the community health worker than they are with the social worker, case worker, or whatever the medical professional may be, because we're not as structured as that medical professional may be. And so that may give them another level of comfort that they can open up a little bit more. And then the community health worker in turn can share that information with the medical providers so that we can help them with the care that they need. Another thing that We Think for a Change does, and I assist with, is the outreach, which is the education piece. We hand out condoms and other pertinent sexual items needed for safe sex. We go to apartment complexes, high schools, as well as community events, and pass out the home testing kits. As Director Rollins mentioned earlier, there are other organizations that will come to the events and do the testing there on site. So through collaboration is how all of these things get done. It's having that other hand to get into places where you can't actually, or the medical professional can't actually get into because they're structured, their structure is so stringent. I mean, you may not be able to call your clients every day. Some clients I call every day because there may be something going on with them. So I may have to talk to them every day for a couple of days or whatnot. Next slide, please. Advocacy. A lot of advocacy is done. We have clients that have moved here from out of town, from out of state. They may need assistance. Someone needs to advocate for them. They don't know where to go or what to do or how to do it because we're in a different state. And we have people that are here in the state that if they're newly diagnosed or perhaps they've been diagnosed for a while and just don't know how to navigate the system, or they don't know that their voice matters. So we at We Think for a Change will lift them up so that their voice can be heard, and we're that advocate for them. So we also show them how to advocate for themselves, and that's part of the different webinar series that we perform and the retreats that we do. We always talk about how they can advocate for themselves. Next slide, please. We teach them to believe in themselves, the word cloud there. There's a lot of self-affirmations that we give them, teach them to love themselves, show them that they can love themselves and be loved by others as well. Next slide, please. Giving them self-esteem. That's all about self-esteem. We at We Think for a Change will also help with employment. So the food delivery, those are people living with, and they get a small stipend to deliver to the clients that are in need of food. And so that helps them to be employed and to feel good about themselves and to be their own boss, which is the BYOB. And that's their freelance work. That makes them independent. That shows them that they're important and that they can help others as others are helping them. Next slide, please. So it's all a puzzle. We all need to be at the table. And if we're all sitting at the table and we're working together and collaborating, then we'll be able to put this puzzle together and end the epidemic. Next slide, please. Question and answers. I'm going to look through the chat where our time is at 6. One concept is that we have to change. Okay, I saw that. We also need to utilize a status neutral approach. Okay, I read that one. Black communities need to know about PrEP, post-exposure prophylaxis. Okay, those are all the comments. I don't have any other comments. Naima, back to you.
Is it back to me for real?
Yes.
So does anyone have any questions? I don't know if people are able to unmute themselves and ask a question or make a comment that they might have.
And those links are in the chat for those who asked for it.
Yeah, I did put the links to both the videos in the chat. So I know that, you know,
Our information.
I hope that the information that we've shared has been relevant to you. I hope that someone did learn something from the information. Maybe next time it can be a different discussion, but I think that until we figure out, and I saw the comments that Brian Jones made, but he's right. There's a whole different, it's just like we're scratching the surface, and we don't want to necessarily deal with the concept because it's a lot. And we don't even have good race relations conversations. And so 40 years later, we really need to figure out how we are going to end this epidemic. And it's not going to be a few people sitting at the table. It's going to be everyone sitting at the table in their communities, putting their input in. And it's not going to be who has the best argument, because there shouldn't be an argument. We need to deal with women who have children and making sure that they can get to the doctor's appointments and providing daycare and transportation for them. That might be in someone's community. It may be that some people live in rural areas. So how are we going to provide transportation to them to come into their doctor? Because a lot of them don't want to go into their neighborhoods because people may find out that they're positive, or they may not have a valid doctor who deals with people living with. So there are a lot of things that different communities, because no one's community is the same, and rural versus urban and suburban, you know, because some people are not even offered an HIV test. I know a woman who was white, and she was having some serious illnesses going on with her health. They tested her for everything else, even put her through invasive procedures that if they had just tested her for HIV, she wouldn't have had to have gone through all of that. So we need to start thinking that everyone, if you're having sex, then you're at risk. If you're having sex and you have had sex with people that you don't know, you need to get tested. If you went outside your marriage, you need to get tested. As long as you are human and alive and you're sexually active, then you're at risk. We need to get rid of these silos of people who are just, it's only certain categories. You know, it's only this person who needs to get tested. No, we need to make it universal. And I think if we do that, we will get everyone who needs to be in care, and we will provide the necessary resources for people who want to stay negative. I want to say thank you. I don't want to end early, but I don't want to just do some stuff. So if no one has, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Naima. It's actually 6 o'clock.
Slides.
Someone's not able to see. If you request the slides, you will be able to get those links. So please, our information, I think the next slide, Naima, shows our emails. Mm-hmm. So if you will request that information, then I apologize, it's not showing up in the chat. It is there. So we will be able to get the slides and those links over to you. Thank you. And it is 6:03 at this moment.
Okay, great. So we did good. So you mean someone can't see the YouTube stuff? Oh, okay. It's in the chat. It's not in the Q&A.
Right. She can't see it in the chat, she said.
Oh.
Or I'm not sure if it was a male or I'm not sure who said that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I have been honored to provide this information to you. I hope that you did get something out of it. My goal is that people start having conversation about HIV, and, you know, have real conversations, not just put a program together and you don't ask a person living with if there's something that they would do. So we need to start from the ground up. We don't need to start from the top to the bottom, because if you haven't done any research about the people who live in your community, how do you know what they need? Tina or Michelle, any last words before we sign off?
I'd like to thank everyone for attending. We are out of time. It's 6:04, but thank you so much. I put the email address in the Q&A. So if you can reach Tina, Naima, or myself at We Think for a Change at Gmail.
You guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you, Tina and Naima.
Okay, I stopped sharing my screen.